I think 1985 was the most critical year in contemporary Christian music ever. And it tests what the mission was purported to be.
This is Rock That Doesn't Roll, the story of Christian music. I'm Andrew Gill, a music journalist who grew up listening to Christian rock.
And I'm Leah Payne. I am author of God Gave Rock and Roll to You, a history of contemporary Christian music.
And today on the show, we have we've been sort of tracking in this direction slowly over a few episodes. And it's a perfect fit for where we've been going chronologically. So we are going to join a expert thinker on this industry and this world to take a deep dive into 1985. To do that, we have Tim Dillinger joining us today. And Tim, I'm going to ask you how you tell people what your job is, but I'm going to read a few things that I've found on the internet. My favorite is Soul Selector, and you're a producer, you are a singer. Your Substack bio indicates that you are an independent researcher of CCM and gospel music. You're a Pentecostal humanist. Welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, what would you tell someone that you do?
Very simply, I tell people I'm a gospel music historian.
Oh, perfect.
I think that's the short. And I do think, though, that connects with being a curator, because I tell selective stories. I'm not trying to tell the comprehensive story of everything that ever happened in gospel music and contemporary Christian music. I'm interested in telling the stories of particularly women, queer people, black gospel music, and the ways those worlds connect. Because I feel like there's a narrative going on about contemporary Christian music and gospel music that's isolated, and I feel like it's a lot more interconnected than we like to think. So that's the short of it. I'm a curator.
Nice.
And a historian.
I'd say our mission statements dovetail very nicely. Yeah, so welcome to the show.
Yes, I'm especially happy that you're here, Tim, because listeners of this podcast may not know, but Tim was one of my earliest friends of, there's a small group of people who are trying to do archival and like historical work in this world. And there's a small group of people who have the kind of depth of knowledge that you have. And so I've been a fan early on. Thank you for talking with me as I wrote the book. And so it's just a real delight to have you here, because there are very few people who have the depth and breadth of knowledge in this world like you do. So yay. Welcome.
Well, it's very humbling coming from you, because you wrote the books. You wrote really, and I mean this, I'm not just saying this because you said a lot of nice things about me just there, but I am saying this because one of the things I've lamented for a long time was the fact that most of the books about contemporary Christian music were coming from older, straight, white men. And because of that, there's a particular narrative that has been created. And so I felt like it was really important for it to be told by a woman with your particular life experience and perspective. And so I'm grateful that you wrote it, because it's amazing and it's important.
Mutual admiration, all three of us. Yay!
That's right.
And I will say, Tim, for listeners who might not know who you are, I've started reading your Substack, God's Music is My Life, a while back, and I would say that it's akin to like getting deep into a box set from the Numero Group or something.
I love that.
It's like, it's stuff you are not going to be listening to or finding anywhere else. It's like very deep crate digging in this very specific part of the world, and making connections that are not incentivized by any capitalist product that is being moved. So yeah, I think you're telling important and interesting stories. So if you're a music head, you would really enjoy the Substack, God's Music is My Life. And that's where I found the two, it's beyond 2 parts now, but I first saw these first two posts you were doing about the year 1985. and I thought, oh, perfect. We got to do an episode on this because 1985, you're like doing multiple posts just about what was going on with CCM at that time, some artists who were in the mainstream but were Christian. Why don't we just start, though, by talking about why did you choose 1985? How is it important in the history of Christian music? Is it significant, or is it just that it's 40 years ago and we're in 2025? No.
I've been waiting for this for like 5 years because because I think 1985 was the most critical year in contemporary Christian music ever, because I think it was things had reached a pinnacle. Sales, marketing, promotion, mission, vision, it had all reached this tipping point. And so by 1985, CCM is outselling jazz, it's outselling classical music, and which, of course, when you start making a lot of money, other people with money get interested. And so you have A&M Records getting interested, Capitol Records getting interested, and it opens up the playing field. And it tests, in my mind, what the mission was purported to be, which is we want to reach the world. And so in 1985, we get this test, we get this experiment. And so you get Amy Grant, you get Petra. Basically, all the people that were distributed by word had this opportunity to be considered by A&M for marketing and distribution dollars. Everything was distributed, but they were actually sinking marketing dollars into specific artists. And so Amy Grant was the first. They toyed with Petra, they toyed with Russ Taff. And ultimately, they succeeded to a point with Amy Grant. But I think in my mind, it got too real. It got too real. And so you started having artists wielding a lot of power over kids in the church. And so when you have Amy Grant talking about, I'm just trying to like make a connection with people who aren't like me. I'm trying to have conversations with young people and create music they can relate to. And I need to sing about not just Jesus. I need to sing about love. I need to sing about life. I need to sing about the pressures and all of these things. And other artists start replicating that. So Christian music completely changes. And so
let's paint the picture of what was before, so like, I don't know, I always think about politics. So I'm like, Jimmy Carter is the first evangelical elected president. He has the big gospel concerts on the White House lawn. Larry Norman performs at the White House he also is buds with Bob Dylan and the Allman Brothers, and great documentary from CNN about rock and roll president Jimmy Carter. Then we get Ronald Reagan comes in 1981. What's the state of the Christian music industry like leading up to that stuff? Like, when did Amy Grant's first album get released?
77.
Okay, yeah. And she did not become a major star.
That's just like, so I mean, I put that in Jesus music territory, pretty much, so it's, I really think that's a helpful, Andrew, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it, like the 70s stuff, I think is rightly thought of in the Carter kind of era, and the kind of warm, piety, democratic kind of forms. And then the 80s, I don't know, it's like, would you agree about this, Tim? Like that there's the kind of the sort of materialism and prosperity that is associated with like 80s culture. CCM starts to kind of kind of interact. I mean, totally. It's right when it's getting big. So anyway,
well, because you also have, Christian culture is also by this time. Jim and Tammy Baker are pretty much at the center. PTL Club was being what's the television term for distribution? Syndicated. Was, you're seeing the PTL Club on secular television stations. They were buying time on secular stations, and so that's really how they emerged. They did not emerge through the Christian music, the Christian television machine. They started as a show and then created their own network. So they were opulent and also worldly. The Jim Baker of 1980 was not the Jim Baker of 2025. It was a totally different person. And so you've got this, it was, to me, they were there's a certain grossness to the money piece, but they were really demonstrating what a contemporary Christian was.
That's a postcard from the Tammy Faye Show. And understand your record's doing great things around the country. Radio stations are writing you. I don't know if I like all those disc jockeys writing you.
I do. I praise
They're
the
all
Lord.
Christian
Jim.
disc jockeys,
oh,
though, aren't they?
certainly. I hope so. I hope they are. They've even sent me tapes to, send me little things that I'm supposed to read on a tape and send back to them to introduce my record. And they say that it's going very, very well, and I just praise the Lord.
So, contrary to popular belief, there are some saved disc jockeys.
Yes, I would say so. They're really nice. They're writing really nice letters.
They're playing your record.
Yeah, I can't believe it. It's just a dream come true to me, Jim, because more than anybody in the whole world, that I've never considered myself a singer, and yet it's God,
Tim, okay, because you put this in your bio, Pentecostal humanist. You and I have had conversations about that, but I wonder, do you have any memory of that era as a Pentecostal kid watching? Like, do you remember how it felt to see these folks like Amy Grant, but also the Bakers, and just that kind of flashy? Yeah.
Well, I loved it because they were so worldly. Because we were rigid. We weren't like that. My grandparents who pastored, my mother was a minister, ordained minister. We were not like that at all. I mean, I had to fight for contemporary Christian music to have it in my house. Some of it was taken from me. And so when I saw the Bakers, particularly when I saw their kids, when I saw Tammy Sue and Jamie Charles, I was like, they're the cool kids. That's who I want to hang out with. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember seeing all of that and going like, why isn't our area like this? Why isn't it like this? And I don't necessarily mean the opulence, but there was a mentality that was actually quite open.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think people miss when they go back and look at it today. They don't see that part of it, is that intellectually there was a curiosity about what was happening in the world. And I want to be a part of what's happening out there too.
Oh gosh, I love that you brought that up, because I always think about it in terms of class. Like, I think that people look at their conspicuous consumption and the flashiness, and a lot of middle class people feel ew when they see it. And I've always thought, well, wait a minute, especially Tammy Faye, she was raised in poverty. This is like there's a different aesthetic that comes along with different, social class. And I have never thought of it until you said so just now, as Pentecostals really engaging with curiosity, the outside world. Like, I'm going to be thinking about that for a really long time.
Well, and I have to say, I also have to say there was a piece of the Pentecostalism that the Bakers, I saw Russ Taff on the Metals tour, right? So we're in, and I'm digressing a little bit, but I feel like this is important because you've got them. He's in the metal suit,
right? Right.
He's in that blue suit with the metal and the guitar, and it's rock and roll,
it's glam,
and all of this.
Yeah.
When you hear the music play, fall on your knees and begin to pray, they were told.
And in the middle of that show, in the Bayfront Center in St. Petersburg, Florida, which was a major performance hall, somebody in the audience stood up and gave a message in tongues. It stopped the whole concert. Russ interpreted that. If you're Pentecostal, that's
story.
The custom, right?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah.
Russ interprets, goes down on his knees, weeping on the stage, and it was transformed. It was something completely different. It was started as a rock concert, and it turned into a service. And to me, I've always looked at that. I've always gone back to that as an artist, just as a Pentecostal humanist, a person that does not necessarily subscribe to all of the things people subscribe to today. But spiritually, that's my connection. And so to me, that's what it is. It's this ability to be this, but I'm also this. I'm both of these things. I'm spiritual and I'm worldly. And that's how the world should see us, as being able to be both things.
Rock that doesn't roll.
Hey, Rock That Doesn't Roll listeners, we want to let you know about an event coming up in October called Theology Beer Camp. It's October 16th to 18th in St. Paul, Minnesota.
I'm really excited about this because it brings together a lot of my favorite things. I'm not really a beer drinker. I feel like I shouldn't say that. But what I really like to do is hang out with people and talk about theology and religion in public life with a lot of really smart people and think about culture, because really our podcast is about religion and culture, I think. In the spirit of those comparison charts, if you like rock that doesn't roll, you'll love Theology Beer Camp, I think is a pretty safe thing to say.
I think there's a pretty good chance that you would. The thing that we want you guys to know is that if you register for this event, which is October 16th to 18th in St. Paul, Minnesota, use our code RTDR and you'll get $75 off your registration.
What a deal.
Again, use the code RTDR and you'll get $75 off registration at Theology Beer Camp 2025. TheologyBeerCamp2025.com is also the URL where you can go to register. Can I just ask a clarifying question real quick? When Russ you said Russ interpreted the speaking in tongues, what did that mean? What did he say? Did he say like this is what they're saying, or did he?
That's what, because in particularly in white Pentecostal spaces, that's what would happen. If someone stood up in a service and gave a what we called a message in tongues, and it halted the service, because there's like a volume thing that happens with that.
Yeah,
You
can do it under your breath, and then that's their spiritual language. But once you like get a little louder than everybody else, that's right.
You're basically channeling. That's really the best way to say it. You're channeling something. So somebody else also has to be connected and channel the interpretation. Okay. If you only have a message in tongues, the person is out of order. Right. That's what we were always taught. This person is out of order.
Then there's a scriptural reference.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And people would just wait, usually with music underneath, for a good long time before
for someone else to be like, all right, this is what they just said.
It's pretty, it's really high stakes too, because if you think about it, like the suspense, it's a thrilling moment in terms like as a performance, because everyone's just waiting, and then
tension.
It builds tension, and then usually, somebody is set to kind of govern whether or not this is a like an acceptable interpretation too, because sometimes it's not. Anyway, keep going.
Twice I've experienced people being told they were out of order.
Oh.
Twice. I saw it. Once was in a big church. I just thought, I would just want to crawl under a rock if that was me. And one was actually at my grandparents' church. But yes, I mean, I've seen it go both ways.
And so when they say you're out of order, they're saying the Spirit was not speaking through you. You just wanted to be seen. You wanted to be seen. You're faking it or something. Yeah.
Or sometimes they would say, like, I've been in services where they kind of want to let the person off the hook, so they'll say that might have just been for you, brother or sister so and so, but we don't think that's for the whole of the and it's very, I can't even imagine. I had never the guts to like either deliver a message or interpret it, so I was only an observer in those.
You knew nicer people.
It's West Coast. I think it's that West Coast hippie culture. Like, it's okay, man. It's okay.
Now, I have to say, since we're talking about speaking in tongues, like even in the 90s, I grew up in United Methodist Church, and I would go on youth retreats and things like that. And occasionally there, even in those spaces, you would hear like somebody in the crowd just like by themselves, not projecting, not interpreting or anything like that. But you would occasionally hear that, come up, because that was how ecumenical evangelicalism was at that time, it just permeated all over the place. And the other thing that I was thinking of when you were talking about that is just the juxtaposition of like a Quaker meeting, because there's a lot of Quaker meetings. Like if you do it correctly, you're supposed to sit in silence until the Spirit moves an individual, because there's no clergy that's like running a service or anything, but you sit in silence until the Spirit moves someone to get up and speak, not in tongues, just in the common language, but But yeah, it's a less exciting, I guess. There's no music underneath. You're just sitting there. It's silent.
Because I teach at a Quaker university, and I've been to open
right.
worship before, and I have often felt like it was that sans music. Like it was very, very similar because it's kind of high stakes. And then I sort of learned, because I got to know some Quakers, that there are people, just like in Pentecostal circles, who somehow get spoken to more than others, and everyone's a little eye roll, So it's like there are those cultures that it's
Right.
quiet, but kind of same idea. Because, like I remember a friend of mine, we need to get back to 1985, but a friend of mine one time she was Methodist. She was assigned to go to like a church service that was different than hers. And so she went to Belmont Church, Tim, in Nashville. Which is very charismatic church,
Yes.
long history in CCM too. But anyway, so she was at Belmont Church, and she talked to me afterward, and she was like, that was total chaos. Like, I walk in the service, no one tells me what's going on. All of a sudden, people are doing the grapevine around the sanctuary, and I laughed so hard. I was like, oh, well, if you grow up Pentecostal, it's very orderly. You know how it goes. Like, not just anyone gets up at any point in time. Like, Russ Taff knew how to do that, because Russ is like the most Pentecostal.
Yes.
So yeah, he knew. But anyway, back to 1985, Tim. I love that idea of that being a moment, where there's the kind of old school holiness tradition that has governed a lot of contemporary Christian music, like the holiness, rural Southern Baptist, Pentecostal holiness. And then all of a sudden this kind of worldliness. You've talked to us about Russ Taff and Amy Grant. Who else comes to mind, or what other things come to mind about that year that you'd like to share? Because I'm so curious.
Well, I think, to me, one of the people who never gets talked about, and I think she's so important, is Sheila Walsh.
Your love reaching out, how could I ever doubt you? You're the Alpha, Omega, beginning and the end. You're the Alpha, Omega, the everlasting.
Sheila Walsh was pivotal because she was given the opportunity to host a show in England on the BBC called the Rock Gospel Network. So Sheila is really, in many ways, exclusively responsible for the way that contemporary Christian music spread overseas.
Oh.
Because that show, she presented that same idea of being a contemporary Christian. And so she was booking not just CCM artists from the States, she was booking secular artists in England and in the US that were Christians that also did secular music.
Thanks, Jessie. That was wonderful. We're going to be hearing more from Jessie later on. But now, our special guest, Kaja Gugu. Thank you for coming on the programme and welcome.
Hello.
I'd like to talk a bit, first of all, about... you had a recent single out called The Lion's Mouth. And maybe I could ask you, Nick, there's a lot of heavy symbolism in the video, a lot of strange figures, a lot of things happening. Can you tell me just a bit about what it was trying to communicate, what it was saying?
Well, the Lion's Mouth is basically, it's almost become a motto for the band, because since we changed, we felt that we were doing something a little bit risky, a little bit different to what we usually do. So, like, we felt that we've been stepping into the Lion's Mouth and having faith in ourselves, faith in God or whatever.
And so she was introducing this idea that was really controversial, and it was for that reason that show did not come to the United States.
Interesting.
Her producer tried to bring it over here, and he came back. She told me this in our interview and said that when he came back to England, he said, they're not ready for what we do. They're not ready for that to happen over there. And it really was about, I think, the blending. It was too real. It's exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, it's this whole notion of we can only go so far, because what it will change is the infrastructure of the church. If contemporary Christian music had been able to do what I think it could have done, it would have completely changed the relationship of the church. Because we didn't know, most of these artists, we didn't know what church they went to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of these artists were intellectuals. And so they're sharing, in CCM, they're sharing their thoughts, and they're not being validated by someone in power. They have their own power.
That's really.
I didn't even know that Sheila Walsh was Scottish, until
Yes.
I read it in your Substack. Yeah.
And her presentation, I think also when you say when you said, who else do you think of? And I think of her, it's because her presentation was so controversial, particularly for a woman. She's standing on stage, she's wearing spandex pants, she's wearing leather, she's wearing lace, she's got the dry ice, she's got the lights, she's dramatic. When she first came to the States, they told her that she was satanic. I went to a Moody Bible school in elementary school, and they told us that.
Really?
She was demonic. Yeah.
Wow.
This is a woman doing dramatic presentation. You're drawing attention to yourself. That's all you're interested in doing. Look at what you're wearing. And so I think Sheila is really, really important, as well as Kathy Tricoli. And I think about Tremaine Hawkins. I think these are all really important people.
Now, in one of the Substack posts about 1985, you point to 3 signs of CCM sort of like showing its cultural power in 1985. The first is like local news stations doing segments on what is this new sound? Could you describe what was this trend and what was the take that was being presented on these local stations and stuff? Who were some of the artists too who were
Rez Band, which was surprising to me because Rez actually gets really excluded because they're famously a Christian left
Right.
and so they were pretty ignored by the establishment Christian press. And so when they'd go into a city, sometimes these local news channels would do a feature about this interesting form, and they were like a harder edge kind of rock. And so what I love about those news pieces is that they're not just pro-Christian music or anti-Christian music, but they're showing you the multiplicity of perspectives. And so you always had the one pastor that thought it was horrible. You had the other, youth pastor typically who understood how it connected to the youth. You also get to see these probably homeschooled children who are so happy to see something that looks something similar to what they're not allowed to watch on MTV. And so I think when you see these news pieces, you get this great cross-culture look at what was happening in the world and why this was unique, why this was happening. Because this was not John Michael Talbot, this was not Jimmy Swaggart, this was, something different. And for many of when you hear the scripts on many of those pieces, they say, if you don't listen closely, you don't know what it is. And I know that was a huge objection from a lot of the Christian audience, but I also think that's the point, is that we, this blending, this idea of being able to blend and not being obtrusive, but being present. Those are the things that matter. And I felt like those news pieces really showcased how well-crafted many of these artists were in their presentation.
It looks like just another rock concert, but something different is going on here. This is religious rock, contemporary Christian music, a multi-million-dollar phenomenon that accounts for 6% of all national music sales. $75 million last year and growing. It already outsells jazz and classical music.
It's life, it's energy.
I like it because it's rock music and it has to do with Christ. My parents let me listen to it.
There are conservative rockers like the Imperials. Winners of 11 Grammys, they used to play backup to Elvis Presley.
We feel we are ministers who sing.
And hard, intense rockers like the Rez, as in Resurrection Band.
Jesus went to the people. He showed love. He demonstrated an understanding of the heart and the need and the hurts of the average person out in the street.
And Petra, one of the top bands.
When we start singing our songs, we start expressing our faith in Jesus Christ as our Savior.
And the queen and darling of religious rock, Amy Grant, 3-time Grammy winner whose records sell millions of copies. This is Christian ministry that reaches young people in a way that sermons from a pulpit do not.
They knew how to talk to the press. They knew how to, they weren't evangelizing even in the interviews. They were talking about their art. And it was a totally different thing than being an evangelist and winning souls. It was about, I'm an artist. Faith shapes what I do. And, it's just a different thing. It was a whole different era.
I'm really struck by that because I think, I've only just scratched the surface of 1985 in my own writing because it's for, obvious reasons, I guess. But one of the things that I think, Amy Grant's by far the most famous of this whole cohort of really thoughtful artists is that they're professionals. They are not like Jesus people. And maybe this is another thing that contributes to Res Band not getting the credit that is due to them, is that they were not professional in the labeled kind of way. They're just doing this weird, commune kind of thing. They're, we interviewed Glenn Kaiser and that guy's going to say whatever he wants to say, you're not going to discipline him publicly. And so I'm thinking about, the Jesus people, so many of them were just hippies. And so they're a little wild and off script, especially people like Larry Norman, where you cannot control what that guy's going to say. These folks are like professional people. And you can see, from my perspective, how they would have been a much safer investment in terms of the industry, because it's like, okay, you don't have to worry that Tremaine Hawkins is going to just start bringing up random things, or, you don't have to worry. Or even, one who's an exception, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because you've written about her a lot, is Leslie Phillips. She's a little bit of a wild card in terms of what she would say publicly.
She is.
I'd love to hear you talk about her. She's one of my favorites.
Well, Leslie's interesting to me because she ended up, of course, becoming a mainstream artist. But in 84, 85, she was very much really just a Christian alternative. There was not a lot about her that was going to be able to cross over. Her music was so directly specific to church kids and church issues. And so when I looked back at it, just writing these pieces, and I grew up on these records, I listened back and I was like, wow, really, her credibility was her look and the sound. It wasn't so much about her lyrics being mainstream leaning. They were not at all. And so that's what makes her really interesting, that really behind Amy and Sandy, it was her.
Yeah.
She was one of the best-selling female artists of that decade. And so she's fascinating, but her performance style got her attention from the secular press.
That's
because
right.
she danced, and it got her a lot of
criticism.
Yes, thank you, because I was trying to not cuss when I said that, so thank you. A lot of stuff got said about her.
That's
and and that was another thing when I interviewed Sheila Walsh. That was one of the things she talked about, was witnessing something that happened to Leslie at GMA during Dove Week. Harsh criticism for her performance. And so what does that mean? What is the positionality of that when you aren't necessarily trying to cross over, but you are trying to push boundaries within Christian music culture? And so there's also I call them internal provocateurs, and there were a lot of those in 1985. Terry DeSario is another important one. And so these were all, and that was somebody with a mainstream past, and so there's a credibility that comes to Christian music because of that cachet. And so it was and 85 was loaded with all of this stuff and all these different kinds of artists.
Rock that doesn't roll.
Hey, Rock That Doesn't Roll listeners. We just want to give you an update on our Patreon support. We have been very heartened to see new people signing up almost every week to help bring this podcast to you. and we could not appreciate it more.
Yeah, so for those of you who may or may not know, this is a work of love. This is a project that comes from the heart. And so we rely on funds from dedicated listeners like you all. Thank you so much to the people who've already decided to give. It's actually, I don't know, it warms my heart. I don't know how you feel about it. Andrew, you were raised Methodist. Is your heart strangely warmed by...
Yeah, just call me John Wesley over here. Yeah. No, it is the thing that, is required to make the show. We are still not really paying ourselves a fair wage, but we are offsetting some of the lost potential earning time that we put into this podcast.
Yeah.
So if you do want the show to continue existing, we do need listeners to support us. And, if that's not financially, you can tell people about us. You could share us on social media, do all other things. But we would love this to be something we can dedicate a lot of time to. But, we have to provide for our families, and we do not each have trust funds. I don't have a trust fund. You don't have a trust fund, do you, Leah?
No,
just
no,
checking. Yeah,
sad to say. Yeah.
So, we appreciate all the support.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Hey, Rock That Doesn't Roll listeners, we want to let you know about an event coming up in October called Theology Beer Camp. It's October 16th to 18th in St. Paul, Minnesota.
I'm really excited about this because it brings together a lot of my favorite things. I'm not really a beer drinker. I feel like I shouldn't say that. But what I really like to do is hang out with people and talk about theology and religion in public life with a lot of really smart people, and think about culture, because really our podcast is about religion and culture. I think in the spirit of those comparison charts, if you like Rock That Doesn't Roll, you'll love Theology Beer Camp, I think is a pretty safe thing to say.
I think there's a pretty good chance that you would. The thing that we want you guys to know is that if you register for this event, which is October 16th to 18th in St. Paul, Minnesota, use our code RTDR and you'll get $75 off your registration.
What a deal.
Again, use the code RTDR and you'll get $75 off registration at Theology Beer Camp 2025. TheologyBeerCamp2025.com is also the URL where you can go to register. I asked Jennifer Knapp this because I got the idea in my head that maybe this was true when, for her era, she said this did not exist. So I'm asking if you know if this existed in 1985. A CCM finishing school akin to like Motown's finishing school. How are all these artists getting so professional and media savvy? Were they just that good and that's why they got into these positions, or was there a formalized training? Do you know?
No, I've never heard of a formalized training in the 80s. But what I will say is that the artists in the 80s, and I don't want to diminish anybody from the 90s, so when I say this, they were just freaking smart. These were well-read, intellectual people. Many of them went to college. Many of them they were not homeschooled. They had a completely different experience than the people that came into CCM in the 90s and 2000s. It's a whole, many of them actually came from the world, finger quotes. And so they had some experience in that. But also, these people had many of them had real managers. Like Sheila Walsh was working with Cliff Richard's management. And so there's a certain level of training you're going to get from having toured with Cliff Richard, having watched Cliff Richard and the other artists that Bill Latham managed, being on the BBC, you're working with actual producers. You learn how to talk to the press quickly. And, Leslie Phillips is just brilliant. I mean, that's just a brilliant woman who knows how to talk about what she's thinking about. Amy Grant. Went to college, had a certain amount of privilege growing up, saw a variety of different cultures and worlds just in growing up in Nashville. And she read, she was interested, she was curious about everything. And that's what came across in those interviews. Even when she would put her foot in her mouth, there was always, it was actually had a hard-edged point underneath it. It was never something stupid. It was usually that she had told a truth that people didn't usually tell.
They didn't want to hear from. So, yeah, certainly not from just a beautiful young woman. They wanted to be their Barbie doll. I really appreciate what you're saying, and I'm thinking out loud here about how, in many ways, the music of this era was used by evangelical activists and caregivers and business people to create this sort of media dome that raised the kids who became 90s stars, right? So
Right.
the bubble was like under construction, I think, in this era. And most of these folks, if they're 20 in 1985, they would have come of age before there was a sort of discrete media verse that was difficult to escape, you know? So I can see when you were saying like, yeah, these 80s folks were a little more worldly, not in the negative, like in the positive sense. They're savvy. They they know people who aren't Christians, you know, like, and then when you get people in the 90s, it's possible to be raised from your conscious life with almost no contact with that external world.
Well, and Andrew, I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and, you know, to piggyback on that, building the dome, you know, I was going to move us to the next item in the three items of CCM's dominance, and that's do something now, which we did talk about. We talked about with Russ Taff and Steve Taylor when they were on the show, and and so this was the CCM answer to We Are the World. Check out our Russ Taff and Steve Taylor episode if you want to hear from people who were personally involved in it. But what I want to know from you is how popular was it, or like, did it have an impact? Like, did a lot of people know about it at the time? Did
Within
it really
Christian culture? They did.
Yeah. Okay. And so it was one of those. It was a big piece of like building an alternative culture system, you know.
Yes.
Speak on how that helped to build the house of
I like
the
that.
bubble.
That's a good question.
Well, to me, it showed a few things that I think people were watching in mainstream culture had not seen. I think what Do Something Now really was a great 4-minute demo on the incredible talent that Christian music had. I mean, you get everybody at their frickin' best. I mean, when you hear Matthew Ward, Sheila Walsh, Phil Keaggy, Kathy Tricoli, Amy Grant, Evie, Sandy Patty, Jesse Dixon, all these people were there, and they each get that one line, and they all killed it.
Yeah.
They all killed it. I mean, there was nobody you went, maybe that, it's like that Huey Lewis line in We Are the World, where you kind of go,
you had one job.
You see all the takes it took, too, if you watch the documentary.
To get that, yeah. And in Do Something Now, it's like seamless, and I was actually, when we were getting ready for this, I was rereading the article about the session, and really, it did seem to move just that swiftly. Like, those people were pros. They were pros.
What I think about it too is they were church people. So, like, I think Kim Floria, I believe, was involved in it, and so
he directed the choir.
Yeah. So these are choir kids in their core, right? Like, this is because like We Are the World is essentially a church choir that is being
Quincy
applied.
Jones is directing. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think of this one. Of course, they're going to kill it. Like, all these people the vast majority of them, I'm gonna guess, since they were kids, had some
Yes.
connection to that world. So they know how to deliver.
And I mean,
It's the 80s Gaither Homecoming.
Totally.
It's like the first Gaither Homecoming.
Yeah.
and
so that,
to be
go
fair,
ahead.
the people who did a good job on We Are the World were doing it because they had experience
Church
in choir
people.
too, probably.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, there's no doubt
the
about
people
that.
who had problems probably didn't sing in
Yeah.
church choir. Yeah.
There's a reason why Bob Dylan's just like staring off into space, you know, like, yeah.
Well, that had to have been a contentious point. I mean, I guess Dylan didn't go to the Dove Awards, so that's why he wasn't there. But
but you know who was supposed to, who they were trying to get there? And I think this also, I wanted to say this because I think it speaks to the difference in the culture at the time.
Oh, yeah. I really want to hear who this is. I want to hear.
They were trying to get Jimmy Swaggart there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, gosh. What a missed opportunity.
Because he hated CCM so
That's
much.
right.
I mean,
right.
He absolutely hated
moment.
it. But that they were willing to reach out to him, and he was at the Doves that year, which is why they thought it might happen. And so that they were trying, I think, really says a lot about how open people were back then. You know, that somebody who had been an outspoken, who had actually just had a long, horrible interview in CCM about CCM, like 2 months before they did this, said, you know what, let's try and get him here. Let's try and get him in. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Actually, that is the most generous reading of that. And that's why I love reading your work, Tim, because you have such a good perspective on that. And I think, I really wish that he would have been there because we would have had so much fun with that. We could have gone so many different directions.
Yeah, well, this is where the difference in your two approaches as historians comes out. Like Leah's a very market-based historian.
Totally. I'm all about the biz.
Culture and
yeah, I love it. And I was going through the list of all the folks that were there, and I was like, do I see any big surprises? And I don't know if I do. Well, it's cool that they had Shirley Caesar. That's kind of fun.
Shirley Caesar.
Yeah.
Bobby Jones in New Life was there, which I think is really important. Larnell Harris had the flu, which is why he wasn't there.
Because he would have just brought that home, you know.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
There was no rival. I guess Jimmy Swaggart occupies the role that Prince's absence occupies in We Are the World.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
just his beef wasn't with Michael Jackson.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Yeah.
So, all right. The third item, though, in the Signs of the Times of 1985 was an episode of Knots Landing with a very special song written by one Amy Grant. So can you talk about the significance of that moment? What is it that happened, and how did it come to be, as far as you know?
Well, I don't know how it came to be. I did a lot of research trying to find out what the story was behind that. I was looking did Lisa Hartman ever talk about Amy Grant? Where was that? But, my personal memory and the reason it stood out to me so much was because I grew up on Knots Landing, but it was on so late. So in 1985, I'm 10 years old, right? So I'm in bed by the time Knots Landing is on. But my mother came and woke me up and said, they're singing an Amy Grant song on Knots Landing. Come look. And she woke me up to come and see it because she knew I loved Amy Grant so much. So that was how I even knew it happened.
Wow.
Was because of that memory.
Personal experience, live on TV, broadcast television.
And Jehovah, I love you so. And Jesus, I want you to know all you've done for me to set me free. I'll never let you go. And Jehovah, I love you so. And Jesus, I want you to know all you've done for me to set me free. I'll never let you go. Consider the creatures of the air.
The fact that in a Christian house that happened, I think kind of speaks to wow, this Amy Grant song is on a primetime, nighttime, one of the highest rated shows of the time. And so that happened was unusual. I don't think that it ever happened. And the fact that she could have sung a hymn, they could have had her sing any public domain song and not had to pay publishing, for sync licensing. And they chose an Amy Grant song really speaks to how far in just a short time Amy Grant had gotten.
Yeah.
You know, in mainstream awareness, that some television producer knew that song and said, you know, let's put that Amy Grant song in there.
So as far as you can tell, it wasn't a corporate synergy thing. All the investments in Christian
Could've been.
labels, or yeah, maybe.
You know, market based. Y'all,
Yeah,
there y'all
exactly.
go.
I wouldn't.
It very well could have been.
I wouldn't be surprised, but also I love the story of your experience of that, because I think it speaks to how, while she was controversial, and I think I agree 1,000% with your analysis of her being a really bright young woman who mostly got in trouble when she spoke her mind about things that were like, it's sort of, you know, if you go back and read it, it's like, where's the lie? You know, I mean, she's a very smart person. But also, so there was always a little bit of controversy surrounding her. But what I like about the story about your mom is that even the people who might have been the most suspicious of her were, I think, overall proud when she ascended, because it was like, we are ascending, right? Like, she's one of us.
Yes.
She's doing this thing. And of course, you know, Americans generally love to tear people down as much as they love to build them up. So it's
right.
probably not going to last. But I just love that story, because it's like, oh, you know, you said your family was protective of your music taste.
They were.
Yeah, but they were proud to see her there. So
They were.
I love that. Yeah.
And I have to say, too, I mean, there was something that happened because Amy was Amy also. I saw the Unguarded tour, believe it or not, that year, 1985.
Amazing.
So we went, saw that performance, and it did shift my mother's perspective. Something about seeing that show, as worldly as that show was, you know, it was a real rock show. Probably the first real rock show I ever saw was Unguarded.
Did you see that in Florida? Was it?
It's at the Sun Dome. I mean, it was a 10,000 seater.
Yeah.
Wow.
I must have seen her the next year, I think, at Carpenter's Home Church in Lakeland.
Wow.
You know, it was her and Michael W. Smith.
Okay.
He wasn't on that tour, was he? Do you know?
No.
When you saw?
Bob Bennett opened.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So I must have seen the next year. I think 1986 must have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Carpenter's Home.
So, okay. I mean, I know, thank you so much, Tim. You've given us a ton of your time and insights. No, are you kidding? I'm just eating it up. But I know we can't talk with you forever. So I was thinking about your, like, what year are you going to next in your mind, in terms of, like, here's 1985. What does 1985 point toward in your mind? If there's like a particular era, or like, where is it?
The heartbreak of 87. Because 87 is where the church gets rocked. And so I always connect it to this. The Jim Baker scandal in April of, really it broke in March, April of 87. It shifted contemporary Christian music because there was embarrassment in my mind. This is how I read it. There was embarrassment, national, international humiliation, and the church is discredited. And all the corporate interests tucked their tails between their legs and abandoned the project.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Interesting.
So what comes on the heels of it is all of the propaganda music. That was the answer. I want to call names because that's kind of, but
No.
you know, when you think about the groups of 88, 89, 90.
You don't have to call the names, because I've done the work. It's all the top.
It's all in the book.
All the top acts. No, but it's true. All the top acts. And I think I really appreciate how you put that, because there are always these sporadic attempts to do art for its own sake, but it never it doesn't take off in this particular marketplace for a lot of reasons. Right. I think you pointed out a really important one. And also that the most reliable consumers were about art as a means toward conservative activism. And so business is just business, right? They don't care. They have no theological interest in creating art for its own sake. So you have people like Steve Taylor and Charlie Peacock that are over there saying like, but, or John Fisher, who was also at that covering. But anyway, and it never really, I like how you, like the corporate interests, they go, well, okay, well, where's the bread and butter? And it's right there.
How do we sell Christian values when Jim and Tammy Baker have had a sex scandal? Plus, the other thing that changes is that the PTL network was a major avenue for contemporary Christian artists. They were probably the only place that pretty unconditionally played contemporary Christian music videos without a whole lot of editorial, that didn't vet in the same ways that 700 Club did, that didn't vet in the same way TBN did with real videos. And so you were getting, I mean, you know, they supported Stryper, you know, which is also just a crazy thing to think about. And so when that disappears, when Jerry Falwell takes over the PTL network, what does that mean for contemporary Christian music?
It's like old time gospel music hour. That's exactly what. Yep.
And so the labels really didn't have any choice. Not that PTL was the only avenue, but I refuse to believe it didn't play a part. And the fact that the artists talk about it so much in 87, 88, even 89, they were still talking about, you know, the after effects of that.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge reason we are where we are today.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if the tiny desk went away, you know, there'd be a certain type of artist that wouldn't have a big platform to, you know, do anything. So, okay.
I love this. PTL as Tiny Desk is a major takeaway for the listeners.
That's really great.
Of Rock That Doesn't Roll. Andrew, I think you gave us our, that's our soundbite.
Yes. Well, one last real quick question, because I know we have to get going, but I've been working this hypothesis for the past few episodes about Bob Dylan's Born Again era. And so my question to you is, did this height that CCM reached in 1985, was it in any way like fueled by the exuberance of having Bob Dylan in your camp for those 3 albums? And you're nodding yes, but I want you to say some words, please.
Well, yeah, because Bob Dylan also, in a sense, really was responsible for Maria Muldaur, and that whole wave brought in, you know, all the other secular art. Denise, you know, there's Denise Williams and Terry DeSario, and you know, became a joke at one point, you know, that so many secular artists were doing Christian music, but I totally agree with that, because I think his conversion, Donna Summer, God, that's another one.
Right.
You know, all these, it was all connected. And Slow Train Coming was a catalyst for that happening. I totally agree with that hypothesis.
All right. Very good.
Totally.
We can keep the Dylan thing alive.
That's right. I love that, Andrew. I love that for you, Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, Tim Dillinger, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully it's not the last visit you make to Rock That Doesn't Roll, because there's like,
anytime you
we've
want
like
me,
barely scratched the surface of your knowledge of this stuff. Like, because most of what you've been telling us this hour has been blowing my mind, you know, as I hear it. So, but where should people look if they want to find you? I've already shouted out God's Music Is My Life on Substack. You're involved with the CCM Museum in Nashville. Is that something that people should look for?
I'm doing some writing. So come to the museum. It opens October 3rd or 4th. I keep getting the day mixed up, but it's one of those 2 days. Come to Nashville and see the museum. I mean, I think when people see the breadth of contemporary Christian and gospel music that's highlighted there, they're going to be really surprised. I mean, I've gotten to write some really fun bios for people I really care about and artists I really care about. So I'm excited just for people to see. We got a little preview a few weeks back. Russ Taff did the inaugural event.
Oh, I love that.
And we got to see, you know, some of the clothes and things that are going to be up, and memorabilia. It's going to be amazing. So I hope people come to the Museum of Christian and Gospel Music in Nashville.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you for being here.
Yes, and congratulations
Thank you for
on
having
that.
me. This was fun.
Yes. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. You can also find us on Substack and Instagram by searching Rock That Doesn't Roll.
And of course, you should give us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using to listen right now. Rock That Doesn't Roll is an independent production supported by you, our listeners, and distributed by PRX.
Our original score is by Jim Cooper of Infomercial USA.
I'm Leah Payne, and the show's producer and co-host is the one and only Andrew Gill.
Remember, rock all you want, but watch it if you start to roll.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Thanks so much for listening to this entire episode all the way to the end. Give yourself a pat on the back. And if you enjoy the show this much, consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/RTDR. Thanks so much.
From PRX.